Welcome to TVBS Meeting Room, where we tackle global issues with a view from Taiwan. I'm your host, Wen-Chi Yu. APEC is one of the few international organizations of which Taiwan is a member. This year, the United States is hosting APEC, and on the margin, the much anticipated summit between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden will take place in San Francisco. We're so pleased to have U.S. Ambassador for APEC, Matt Murray, with us today to share and maybe break some news on APEC priorities. Welcome, Ambassador Murray.
Well, thanks, Wen-Chi. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to be talking to you from San Francisco, where we're getting ready for APEC Leaders Week next week.
Well, I know how you and your team have been working so hard over the last few months, almost a year now, to prepare for this moment. The United States is the host for APEC. And what do you hope to accomplish by the end of this summer, the summit, and what should we expect?
Well, I think when we go back to last year's APEC, Thailand did just such a remarkable job of hosting. And it was during Leaders Week in Thailand that Secretary of State Tony Blinken said that we really wanted to use our U.S. APEC host year to meet the moment that we're in. And what he meant by that is that, we are facing a number of challenges in the region, economic headwinds, the lingering effects from the global pandemic, and, a number of different challenges, including the climate crisis and other things that the whole region really needs to focus on. So we have very much, wanted to use our APEC host year to be able to work with the other economies to come up with some ideas and some solutions to looking at areas like how to promote sustainable and inclusive growth, how to have a healthier digital economy, and also how to really promote resilience and inclusion around the region. And I think I've been really struck in the last year with how much all of the APEC economies have in common when it comes to defining what the challenges are. But we all need to work together to figure out what we do about those challenges and how we can do things collectively where we can help each other. APEC, as you know, is an organization that features 21 economies that make up half of global trade and roughly 60% of global GDP. And as you said, Taiwan is an important member of that under the name of Chinese Taipei. And so, we're really looking forward to next week's opportunity to showcase, what we've been able to do this year on these different priorities.
Well, over the years, it's interesting that you were saying there are obviously challenges, and the challenges that you put out, they're mostly regional challenges. And, some would say APEC as an economic forum is less important now because it was born during the time when the world was much more interested in economic cooperation, trade liberalization, and globalization, right? All these things that you just alluded to. But however, U.S. and China tensions and competition intensified over the last few years. And so economic interests are now very much intertwined with national security interests. And so more guardrails are being put in place. And so how have you been working with leaders in other economies to convince them of the importance of APEC?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great point. I think that all of the economies in APEC have all evolved in different ways over the last 30 years. One of the things I love about APEC is that it was founded in 1989. The first leaders level meeting was in 1993 here in the United States in Blake Island, Washington. And if you think about all of the things that we've tackled since then, we had the Asian financial crisis, we had 9/11, we had the global financial crisis, now we've had COVID. There certainly have been wars and other conflicts as well. But yet APEC has evolved as an organization and has continued to find ways to be helpful and to contribute to addressing some of these global challenges. I think that a lot of APEC's work during the COVID period was unfortunately out of sight, out of mind, because it was all online, and during Malaysia's host year and New Zealand's host year. But I think one of the things that happened during those 2 years that was really important is that APEC, in a way, redefined itself a little bit and what its priorities are, essentially saying, okay, it's been, you know, 20 years since the, or more than 20 years since the Bogor goals in Indonesia. What are the ways in which APEC adds value in the current economy? And so, that's where you had the Putrajaya Vision 2040 and the Aotearoa Plan of Action really define these three drivers of economic growth, being trade and investment, innovation and digitalization, and strong, sustained, balanced, and inclusive growth. And, I think when we look at those three areas, what has happened with APEC is it's become much more comprehensive, looking at, how do you work with economies to really address in a comprehensive way all the challenges that they may be facing. And I think coming out of the COVID pandemic, that's particularly important because we don't want any communities to be left behind. It also, shows that there's areas where we've done a lot of work in the past. For example, in 2011, when the United States last hosted, we launched important work on women's economic empowerment and wanting that to be an issue that APEC economy is really focused on. And we're very proud of our legacy there. But when you look at what happened during COVID and a lot of the challenges that women and all of our economies faced during COVID, and the difficulty with women-run small and medium-sized enterprises being able to access supply chains, the difficulties with the care economy, the difficulties with women being able to fully participate, in the economy in a post-COVID environment, I think shows that we still have a lot of work to do in those kinds of areas as well. So I would argue that it's even more important now than ever before because it's a much more, I think, addressing a much more comprehensive set of issues.
Well, one can argue that when too many issues are trying to be included in this forum, that maybe it'll become harder for anyone to have any focus, right? So I think we saw that the Biden administration also announced the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework last year. And then there are various, regional trade agreements from the earlier Trans-Pacific Partnership TPP to the newer version, which is the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. It is a little bit confusing for some people if they're not paying a lot of attention like you do. So help us understand what are the differences and what does each one try to accomplish? And more importantly, you as sort of the point person coordinating from the US government, State Department on all these related regional economic frameworks and, I would say structures. How do you really handle so many complicated different frameworks?
Yeah, so I think, this has been a well-documented challenge that the region has faced over the years, the so-called, Asian Noodle Bowl of all the various different kinds of agreements.
Asian Noodle Ball, that's
Yeah.
what it's called. Okay.
So you do have a lot of different, trade agreements, either regional agreements or bilateral agreements or preferential trade agreements, or, other kind of forum like APEC, where we're not finalizing trade agreements, but where we are doing a lot of things that support regional trade. I think that over the years, there's certainly been a focus on opening up market access and lowering barriers to entry, also eliminating behind the border trade barriers, also setting standards on important issues like labor, the environment, and state-owned enterprises. And I think we've seen that evolve in recent years to the point where, for example, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework has 4 pillars, one which focuses on trade, including digital trade, another which focuses on supply chains, a third which focuses on decarbonization, and a fourth which focuses on anti-corruption and tax. And I think what that agreement, or that framework definitely reflects is that if we've learned one thing over the last several years when it comes to international and regional trade agreements and international economic arrangements, you need to take a comprehensive approach. When we look at what happened during COVID and the breakdown of supply chains,
Yeah.
or we look at the challenges we're facing with the climate crisis and the some of the maybe the disincentives to decarbonize that are out there, we realize that we need to really focus much more in these areas. I think APEC has been a great platform this year to continue to do that through this organization, but certainly I think we're going to see more efforts out there to try to take that more comprehensive approach and address the fundamentals of all of the various challenges that are out there when it comes to economic and trade cooperation.
Well, you mentioned quite a bit about COVID and its disruptions. And, one of them obviously is the supply chain issue. And, I think the supply of semiconductors became a serious concern for a lot of countries in the world, especially in the US, right? Taiwan this time, again, is represented by Morris Chang, who's the founder of TSMC. And the strategic importance of semiconductors just cannot be understated because it's economic security is national security. So will there be any discussion on semiconductor issues, supply chain resilience at APEC? And how has APEC discussed issues such as, even harder ones like export controls and barriers that US and China pretty much impose on each other?
So our focus in APEC has been on, when it comes to supply chains, has been on supply chain resiliency. How can we make sure that economies have the information that they need in order to set up supply chains that will be resilient in the face of various challenges. Within APEC, we have a supply chain resiliency action plan, which is now, I believe, in its third year, and certainly is a product of some of the things that we learned during the COVID pandemic. And you're absolutely right. I mean, semiconductors is one of those sectors where we've seen, some really significant challenges in recent years when there's been shortages of certain kinds of semiconductors. We experienced that here in the United States in 2021 with the auto sector. But I think what we're also learning is, again, has been talking about a comprehensive approach. Supply chains are a very multifaceted challenge as well. Semiconductors do get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. But also, when President Biden launched his executive order on supply chains, he also focused on EV batteries, focused on pharmaceutical APIs, focused on critical minerals. And so, there's a number of different sectors that we have to be concerned about, and that means there's a number of different approaches that we also need to take. So, certainly we do talk with our partners in Taiwan and other APEC economies about some of the challenges that they're having. In Taiwan's case, they're one of the largest semiconductor producers in the world, but may not have as much production of some of the other key sectors. And so we really need to keep those communication lines open on how we can work together to address that very significant challenge.
And have you been able to use APEC to discuss export controls issues? And you just mentioned mineral, exports as well. I mean, which now, China has just imposed some ban. So how are those issues, or how are these issues being discussed at APEC, if at all?
So within APEC, export controls are not normally on the agenda because they normally are discussed in other settings, around that sort of national security side. But certainly there are a lot of sideline conversations at APEC meetings about, current challenges, and certainly, how some of these issues are being addressed can be discussed on the sidelines anytime these economies get together.
So it sounds like APEC continues to be a forum where I think, the region feels that it wants to work together, right? So it's also, big news that finally that, Xi Jinping is attending the Leader Summit, and sounds like Biden and Xi Summit is indeed taking place. If you could, what can we expect out of the Xi Jinping and Biden summit?
Well, I think as you've seen from high-level officials on the U.S. side throughout the year, we stress that we want to keep the lines of communication with the People's Republic of China open. And so, I've had a number of different high-level visits to Beijing in the last year. Secretary Blinken, Secretary Raimondo, Secretary Yellen, Special Envoy Kerry, and then certainly, welcoming Foreign Minister Wang Yi to Washington the week before last. And so keeping the lines of communication open is very important. And, also focusing on managing competition responsibly and, working, working and focusing on that as we go forward. So certainly working towards a meeting between President Biden and President Xi next week. And, from my perspective as, U.S. ambassador for APEC, I think this is, again, one of the really exciting things about
Mm-hmm.
APEC's value add is that it is a place which is convening leaders on an annual basis where we can really have very high level conversations, both multilaterally and bilaterally. And obviously, the discussion with President Xi is probably the most high profile
Yes.
opportunity. But there's also opportunities. We're going to be welcoming President Jokowi to Washington just before San Francisco. We just had Prime Minister Albanese in Washington a couple of weeks ago. So there's a lot of activity, and we have the Secretary in Japan and Korea, in the next few days. So there's a lot of opportunities for high-level engagement with all of our partners around the region.
So, what are your biggest worries for the upcoming APEC week, and what are you most looking forward to?
So I think we're in a pretty good place in what we've been building towards and building towards next week. We've worked very hard, as you said at the top, across the whole year with the other partner economies, but also with our private sector and other stakeholders. It's been really great to see our private sector rise to the challenge, and
Mm-hmm.
also hosting the APEC CEO Summit and the APEC Business Advisory Council dialogue with leaders and a lot of different events to really showcase the importance of public-private collaboration in APEC as well. But we're talking about a massive event, largest international event that San Francisco has hosted since 1945. You have the
Wow.
21 economies plus a couple of guest economies plus 1,200 or so high-level business executives.
Right.
So I think what I'm looking forward to are those sort of nice surprises that happen that maybe we didn't plan for. An issue that gets resolved, an economic policy issue that gets resolved, or a relationship that improves. Things that we didn't necessarily think would be benefits of this undertaking, and that to me is really exciting. I think the thing that keeps me awake at night is it's just a huge undertaking. There's lots of
Yeah.
moving pieces. There's a lot of different uh, you know people in our government, in
Yes.
our stakeholder community, not to mention in all of the other economies who have definite views about what a successful APEC Leaders Week looks like, and we want to try to deliver for everybody. But that's going to be a challenge anytime we talk about hosting an event of this magnitude. And one of the things I've always enjoyed this year is the opportunity to partner with city government, local government,
Mm,
in hosting these kinds of meetings. We've done this in now Honolulu and Palm Springs and Detroit and Seattle. But
right.
each of those meetings was much smaller scale, and so this is the big one with all the leaders in town. So I'm excited about working with the city of San Francisco, but it's a massive challenge for them as well to be able to put everything on and pull it off without a hitch.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I think almost all your work and efforts you're going to be very proud of, I'm sure. So huge congratulations. And of course, I want to give you another congratulations when everything concludes successfully. But most importantly, wishing you all the best of luck for everything to go smoothly at APEC. And I hope, at the end of APEC, you and your team will get some, well-deserved relax and family time as well. But we all look
Great.
forward to hearing a lot of good news coming out of APEC.